We're still on the EU as the European Commission has decided to cut its aid to 19 emerging countries under its 2014-2020 relief budget in order to focus development aid on poorer countries. The 19 countries losing out are Argentina, Brazil, Chile, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Kazakhstan, India, Indonesia, Iran, Malaysia, the Maldives, Mexico, Panama, Peru, Thailand, Venezuela, and Uruguay. EU's Development Commissioner Andris Piebalgs said the decision was taken to bring about a shift in relations with emerging countries and a focus on the aid on the poorest countries. The 19 countries will no longer be entitled to the 57.5 billion euro or 77 billion US dollar package of development aid between 2014 and 2020. The decision was reached within the context of broader changes to the EU's external spending as it adapts its long-term budget planning to tighter financial conditions and the rise of such rivals on the global economic stage. The 27-state European Union is the world's biggest donor, accounting for 50% of world aid, with 53.8 billion euros or $72 billion handed out last year. The European Commission manages 20% of that aid, or 11 billion euros. The Commission said in an October policy paper detailing the changes that it would increase the volume and share of EU aid to the countries most in need and where the EU can have a real impact, including fragile states. A European Confederation of Relief Agencies said the approach could be flawed as it ignored big local concentrations of poverty within countries whose national averages are higher. It also suggested that the Commission was playing politics with rivals, some of which, such as India, are locked in negotiations with Brussels over bilateral trade details. The Commission said pockets of poverty remained in China, but that more added value was obtained by granting aid to countries like Mali or Ivory Coast in Africa. He said the EU would concentrate on areas where its aid would have maximum impact. Britain, for instance, already pumps vast sums to India, which then pumps out its own substantial aid to African nations. According to Action Aid, 3/4 of the world's poor live in the middle-income countries.
To speak to us more on the European Union, we have Ambassador David Lipman, who is the head of the delegation of the European Union to Thailand. Welcome to the program, Ambassador.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's reported that the European Union is looking forward for more bilateral free trade agreement with ASEAN countries. Can you explain the reasons behind this move?
I thought we were going to talk first of all about the Eurozone crisis, but certainly the European Union has always wished to negotiate free trade agreements with the ASEAN countries, and this policy started several years ago. As regards free trade agreements, we tried initially to negotiate agreements with all 10 ASEAN countries, but in fact we didn't make much progress on all this, and we have changed our policy, and we are at the moment in the process of negotiating individual agreements with those ASEAN countries who wish to negotiate with us. In fact, these individual agreements will be part of a global policy to bring all these agreements together into a single agreement in due course. But at the moment, we are very advanced in negotiations with Singapore and with Malaysia, and we have started with Vietnam. And we are happy to negotiate with other countries who wish to do so. And Thailand has expressed an interest and may well decide to open negotiations with us next year. So that's the situation with free trade agreements at the moment.
Right.
But obviously trade is very, very important to helping us out of our financial crisis.
So now jumping back to the EU summit that's happening today, could you give us a brief on the situation there and what could we expect more from the talks today?
Yes. Let me set the scene, really, for what is happening, because last night, in fact, they had an informal dinner of all the heads of state and government of the European Union, the 27 member states, and the President of the European Commission, Barroso, and the President of the European Council, Van Rompuy. And today, the discussions will continue at about 5 o'clock Thai time, 7 o'clock in Brussels, in the presence as well of the President of the European Central Bank. Now, what is going on at the moment is very much in the glare of international publicity. In terms of facts, not very much has come out yet because it was an informal dinner where they have been discussing the latest developments in the financial markets and the economic and financial crisis. But it's very important, obviously, to have a wider approach to the crisis and to look at short-term and medium-term solutions. But at the moment, what is at stake, of course, is the credibility and confidence in the euro.
Yes.
The whole world is watching us, and what they're trying to do and what the leaders are trying to do is to restore confidence and credibility to the Eurozone by achieving more convergence and more discipline, and by finding a European solution to show the world that the euro is irreversible and that everybody is standing by and supporting the euro.
Right, so now the situation is fragile in the EU. What sort of impacts will it bring to the Asian region?
Well, I think that the whole world is certainly affected by this crisis, including the Asian region, and we know that we have a duty in Europe as well to stem the crisis, to deal with the crisis in a very serious matter, taking short-term measures on fiscal stability and fiscal convergence and more discipline to ensure that the whole world economy does not get affected more seriously by this crisis, because there is no doubt that if the crisis continues, it will affect everybody. It will affect the possibilities of the European Union to continue to trade in a very effective manner that it's doing, particularly with ASEAN, for example, which is a huge trading partner. If there is another recession in Europe, obviously this will affect the world.
Yes.
And the free trade agreement wouldn't help much too, right?
Well, the free trade agreement would certainly be something that will help in the medium term. But at the moment, there are not just medium-term problems, but we have to deal with the short-term problems as well, and the question of confidence and credibility of the Eurozone. And that's very much short-term, and we need to deal with this firstly. The medium-term solutions will be things like continuing our policy of negotiating free trade agreements with the countries of ASEAN, for example. That is very much. But this is not for tomorrow. This is for next year.
Ambassador, there's going to be another big event next week, which is the World Trade Summit.
Yes.
What do you expect to be some of the key discussions from the European Union side?
Absolutely. The center of world attention will move from Brussels to Geneva next week, when all the trade ministers will be trying their very best to make progress, particularly in the framework of the Doha Development Round. And we, the European Union, are very much pushing as well for a solution there. But these things have been taking a long time, and I can't say with any certainty that there will be major progress on that. At the moment, everybody is very much focused on the Eurozone crisis. When we can get that over with, and hopefully tomorrow, the decisions, and today, or it will be tomorrow in time, Thailand time, but today in Europe time, we hope we can make major strides towards solving the Eurozone crisis, and then we'll be able to focus a little bit more on what happens next week in Geneva, where we are very, very keen, of course, to pursue and make progress on the Doha Development Round.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Lippman, for your very insightful information.